How's it going, everyone? This is JR with the Hustler's Apprentice, and I appreciate you guys for tuning in. And if you'd like to check out videos about credit, real estate, gigs, jobs, things of that nature, I invite you to subscribe to my channel. Hit the bell, that way you receive all the notifications for all my future videos. So let's jump right into it. Really quickly, you're trying to get a high limit credit card and you're trying to figure out what's the best way to go about doing it. Where do I start? Is it possible? So on and so forth. So there's a few things I'm going to address on this video to try and clear it up for you guys who are looking. And this is on the personal credit side. So just so we establish that this isn't a business credit side of credit. This is just the personal credit side of trying to get a high limit credit card. So the first thing is, when you're trying to get a high limit credit card, the biggest thing you want to look at on your credit report is first of all, you want to know what's on your credit report. And you want to make sure you have little to no derogatory marks on your credit report. Because most of the time that's going to be an automatic denial. What I mean by that is charge-offs, collections, things like that. You want to have all those virtually gone off of your credit report. If you haven't, that's a different video as far as getting that done, but that's for one. As far as inquiries, when we get into these more elite credit cards that we'll talk about, you want to have minimum inquiries as well also. So that's the other thing. When I say minimum, I'm talking like preferably preferably zero, but no more than 2 or 3, maybe 5 at the most, but around 2 or 3 inquiries on your credit report. And that's another thing. So once you have that taken care of, the other part is, what do you have on your credit report? Because if you have a blank credit report, when I say that, you have no active primary trade lines, aka lines of credit. This means you don't have any loans, nothing active on your credit report. You need to start getting those, and you need to have a minimum of 5 of those at the end of the day, which will basically give you a solid file. What I mean by that, by having a solid file, is having a minimum of 5. Because your credit report is your resume at the end of the day. Having a minimum of 5 means that you're no longer viewed as high risk. Anything less than 5 accounts, creditors, when they look at your report, you have a lack of credit history, which makes you high risk. So that's another thing you want to have. Within those 5, you want to at least have, and you're probably like, well, where do I start with this? This is crazy. How do I get 5? Check out my other videos and things like that to find out how to get that 5. So with those other issues, you want to have at least, if you've never had any credit in the past, once you do start adding 5, you want to get some that are seasoned trade lines, aka piggybacking, or if you already have some of those, you want to have at least something around 2 to 5 years old. I mean, you can still get them with less, but to get those higher limits, they want to see a track record that you have had a good payment history in terms of that. So you want to have at least 2 of those that are seasoned, and within those you also want to have one with a minimum of about $5,000 to $10,000 credit limit, $5,000 to $10,000 credit limit on there. So when you do apply, they'll see that you already have some established credit on there. Another way that you can do it, you can check out my previous video. I'll link it at the end. You want to have multiple trade lines of your own that are primary that show that you have some substantial amounts, i.e. 5,000, which some of you may not consider that much, but we do have those, or there are ways of getting those for people who have no credit, which is instant approval, but you have to pay to play when it comes to that as well. The other thing that a lot of these, because there's an algorithm, just so you guys know, when you're applying for these credit cards, there's an algorithm that every creditor underwriting, as far as whether it be Capital One, Chase, Bank of America, they all have a built-in automated underwriting system within this algorithm that will automatically deny you if you don't put in certain information or if you don't meet these qualifications. Some of these things is the same thing as well. If you haven't been employed for 5 years, that's an automatic trigger. If you haven't been living at the current residence for 5 years, that's another trigger. The amount of money that you make is another trigger as opposed to that debt to income that they're looking at, because they have that in their algorithm as well, that they calculate how much you put in and they're going to see how much debt you have on your credit report. So that's going to be something that you might want to keep in mind when you're putting down your income and things like that. Because a lot of these things, people wonder why they automatically get denied. And this is some of the reasons why, because they are going to look and say, well, you only put down that you make $8,000 a year, but you're asking for, if they ask you, because some of them will ask how much you're requesting, you're asking for $20,000. So these are things you want to be aware of when you're applying for these credit cards. Some of these companies have that 2-year rule where you can't apply for whatever it is, 48 months, where you can only get like 2 cards within the past 2 years or something like that. I don't know it right off the bat, but these are for like Chase, and I believe American Express has this, and I believe there's a couple others who don't allow this within 48 months. You can only get a certain amount of cards, so be wary of that. So these are some things if you're going into the game before applying for a credit card. So many people, so many of my clients, they go out and they apply for credit cards, and it's like Hail Marys. Their credit report is completely jacked up. They've got bankruptcies, or they got like 30 and 40 collections and charge-offs, 60 inquiries, and they think that, and they haven't been paying on a car note on time for the past 5 to 6 months, and they're wanting a creditor to grant them thousands of dollars, and it's just not realistic. We have to be realistic about these things. If you were loaning out money or lending money, would you extend credit to someone who has a history of not paying their bills on time? This is how we have to think when we're doing these things. So that's another thing to think about. So these are the basics for getting high limit credit cards. The best places a lot of times is you want to establish relationships with banks, preferably your bank and other credit unions. A lot of the major banks out there, you want to establish relationships, i.e., you got the USAAs, the Navy Federals, the Pentagon Federals, you have the Chase banks, you even have the Discover Bank out there. Capital One, you want to establish relationships with this by getting one product or multiple products. Sometimes that's what you have to do to kind of get in and see that you have a payment history. It's all about looking at your credit report as a resume. The higher your credit score, and this is probably the next thing you're going to ask me, because some people think that you can have you can be in the 500s and get these huge limits, or even get approved. Not so. Or even in the early 600s and get these huge limits. Not so. Or I'm talking unsecured, just unsecured Visa, MasterCard, American Express, Discover. No, it's not happening. You want to be at a bare minimum, you want to be at like a 690, 700. And that's even pushing it with some of these. Chase, I wouldn't even apply unless I had like a 750 when I'm dealing with Chase. I'm just being honest with you. So 690 at a minimum, preferably 700 when you're applying for these. And keep that in mind, that algorithm is going to look at how much you're able to handle based upon how much debt you already have and how much income you're making. So keep that in mind. So if you're starting from scratch, right? Let's just say you don't have any credit. If you're starting from scratch, keep those. If you just got 5 primaries, let's say you purchased my walkthrough, or you already getting 5 primaries that report to all 3 credit bureaus, you want to garden that stuff for 6 months is what they call it, gardening. You want to keep that account for at least 6 months. That way you have some established history. And like I said on my previous video, 6 months is the point where a trade line generates a FICO score. And lenders are looking at that at this point. So all those things I just covered, if you stick to those, you should have no issue getting a high limit credit card. So try it out. I work with clients all the time who do consultations, and I view their credit report and looking at it, I'll give them suggestions on what's the best course of action when it comes to that. So with that being said, I appreciate you guys tuning in. If you feel like this video has been a benefit, I invite you to give it a thumbs up, subscribe to my channel if you haven't, if you want to see more videos about credit, real estate, about jobs and gigs and things like that. Feel free. I invite you to subscribe along with the bell. That way you receive all the notifications for all my future videos. I also invite you to subscribe to my other 2 channels. The links are in the description. Check those out as well. And if you have any comments or any thoughts on this topic, feel free to comment, below. If you have any questions or you seeking any advice, feel free to message me. All those links are in the description as well. Or any topics you'd like me to discuss, comment them below and I'll touch on that topic. And I look forward to seeing you guys on some of my upcoming videos. So with that being said, peace be upon you, and I'll catch you on the next one. I'm out.